Hey guys, this is Ryan, and I just want to start by thanking the Life Group leaders for everything that you're doing to just pour into people's lives. And for those of you who are opening your homes each week, thank you. And really, just everyone who's staying committed to going to Life Group just every week. What you're doing is so critical to what we're about at Impact 580, and it is always better to do life together. So keep up the good work. So week three was Just Mercy, and when I picked this movie, I had no idea that our country was getting ready to experience just months of unrest and protest due to racial injustices. Truth be told, whenever I watched the movie, I was just shocked to see at how much racial injustices there were going on in the 1980s, and then fast forward to George Floyd and just countless others that's continuing on to this day. It breaks my heart to see how far we still have to go uh, on the issue of racial injustices. So for me, this movie was a real eye opener. It was about 2.5 hours long, so there's a lot that we weren't able to cover today, but I would encourage each and every one of you to watch this movie. It made a huge impact on my life, and I know it would do the same for you. So we're going to go ahead and dive in. In the opening scene, we saw a conversation between Brian and his mom, and the thing that stood out to me the most was Brian's quote that you always taught me to stand up for those who need help the most. Because this is something that we see over and over again in Scripture. God tells us to speak up for the poor and the helpless and the orphaned and the widows. So essentially, those who need help the most. Proverbs 31, 8 and 9, a verse that we use during this message, was speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. Ensure justice for those being crushed. Yes, speak up for the poor and helpless and see they get justice. So what we're going to do here in a second is to just describe a time that we or you stood up for the poor and the underserved. Maybe it's giving money or food to someone who's homeless or in need. Maybe it's volunteering and serving meals. I know there are many families in our church who have fostered and adopted children. Maybe it's just standing up for someone when you witness them being treated unfairly. So here's the question. Here's something that I would like us to go around our groups and answer. When was this time that you stood up for the poor and the underserved? So if you didn't have a story to share, that's okay. I would definitely encourage you to pray and to look for opportunities to serve the underserved. When you pray for those things and ask God for those things, I know that He will definitely be faithful to deliver opportunities your way. So we're going to shift to Johnny D now. And Johnny D was just in this horrific situation. He was arrested and convicted of a crime he didn't commit. And he was even placed on death row a year before his trial, which is just completely unfair and unjust. So the question I'd originally thought about asking was, have you ever been accused of something that you did not do? But I just feel like it'll probably pale in comparison to Johnny D's example. Something that had come to my mind was my wife one time got a spanking because her sister wouldn't own up to something that her sister had done. And then when her sister laughed when Jamie got the spanking, then her sister also got a spanking. So, but that is just not even on the same level and the same magnitude as what we're talking about with Johnny D. So I think this is a perfect opportunity to exercise empathy, and empathy is just simply being able to feel and to understand what another human, another person is going through and feeling. So the question is just going to be this. I mean, put yourself in Johnny D's shoes. If you were convicted of murder and put on death row for something that you didn't even do, how would you feel? Okay, so now we're going to look at one more character from the movie, and that is Ralph Myers. Ralph was a convicted felon who himself was on death row, and he was offered a lesser sentence in exchange for a falsified testimony against Johnny D. Ralph's actions were completely just inexcusable and an example of apathy. So, empathy is being able to feel what other people feel and understand what other people are feeling. Apathy is a complete lack or concern of others and the way that they feel. Johnny D was innocent. He was an innocent man, husband. He was a father to 3 children, and he could have died because of Ralph. I do love the courtroom scene though, where Ralph finally looks at Johnny D, and he finally gains empathy, and he finally understands what it is that he's putting Johnny D through, and from that moment on, he can't help but try to come clean and do whatever he can to make sure that Johnny D gets home to his family. So, in Ralph Myers, we get to see an example of both apathy and empathy. So, our next question is going to be this: would you say that you're more apathetic or empathetic towards others? So throughout the movie, Johnny D was dealt one devastating blow after another. Whenever all the evidence pointed to his innocence, I couldn't believe when his case for a new trial was denied. I don't know about you, but I was angry whenever I saw this. What happened wasn't right. I mean, where was justice? So if you fast forward to the end of the movie and the charges against him were dropped and Johnny D finally did get justice, I'll be the first to admit that I cried whenever I watched this. To see someone go through so much and to finally obtain justice just caused these feelings of relief and joy and just a sense of things being made right. But the main point that I want to leave you with is that Johnny D most likely would have never have received justice if it weren't for Brian. In fact, he would have most likely have been executed. So just think about that. The system was stacked against him. Law enforcement failed him, his community failed him, and even the criminal justice system failed him. Brian was the only person willing to fight for Johnny D. He pushed through every setback and obstacle that came their way and did everything that he could under the law. Brian took action. So as Christians, we are called to fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. We are called to action. In 1 John 3:18, we saw, "Let us not merely say that we love each other, let us show the truth by our actions." So as a church, we must speak up for the poor and the underserved. We must take care of the widows and orphans, and we must fight for the souls of the lost. It takes just one person to make a difference in somebody's life, and there is no reason that you can't be that person for somebody. And it could take just one church to make a difference in our community and surrounding communities. And I believe that God has called our church to be that church. Guys, it is time for action. So making a difference requires us to take action, and we do that by just taking the first step. Our last question is going to be this: what is just one way that you can make a difference in somebody else's life? I promise you that there are people around you who don't know God. You could invite them to church or just continue to show them God's love. I believe that God will also put opportunities in your way to just serve people and to give to those in need. The church also has countless opportunities to serve and impact kids and switch and on the host team and so many more. So the last question that I want you to discuss is this: what is one way that you can make a difference in someone else's life?